Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Gerard Pratt, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Warrant Officer Gerard Goff. We warmly welcome the family of Private John Hurley, whose story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome Mr. Dennis Baker, President of the 2nd 20th Australian Infantry Battalion Association. We welcome the veterans who have served, those who are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome the members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Those able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through until the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and loved ones could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private John Hurley. John Hurley was born on the 31st of October 1899 in the Sydney suburb of Parramatta, the eldest of 5 children born to pastoralist and horse dealer John Hurley Sr. and his wife Eliza Mary. John was educated at Granville Public School and was a keen sportsman, playing football, rugby union and cricket for the local teams. As a young adult, he worked on his father's property in Wagga Wagga. While at the local dance there, John met his future wife, Vera Fuller, and the two were married in a small ceremony at St John's, Bishopthorpe in Glebe on the 16th of August 1927. They went on to have 2 daughters, Faye and Suzanne, and moved into the family home on Arcadia Road in Glebe. When the Second World War broke out in 1939, John was working for Goldsborough Mort in Pyrmont as a shearer and labourer. John Hurley enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 11th of June 1940, putting his age down in order to be accepted. He began initial training at Harefield before travelling to Wargrove in July, where he joined the ranks of the 2nd 20th Infantry Battalion. After further training, Private Hurley was allocated home leave to spend Christmas with his family. He returned to his unit on the 28th of December 1940 and embarked for active service a month later, sailing from Sydney on the troop ship Queen Mary. Hurley and his comrades disembarked in Singapore on the 18th of February 1941 and moved to southwest Malaya, where they began training to fight in tropical conditions. The 2nd 20th Battalion spent most of its time operating around Port Dickson, but was also based at Seremban during April. In August, as the battalion prepared to move to Mersing on the east coast, Hurley became ill and was sent to hospital. He was found to be suffering from malaria as well as a number of other stomach complaints. In October 1941, Hurley rejoined his unit, arriving at Mersing, where he and his comrades devoted their time to preparing defensive positions. Mersing was connected to Singapore by a surfaced road and was carefully defended as a potential landing place. The situation in the Pacific continued to deteriorate as war with Japan seemed increasingly inevitable. In December 1941, the 2nd 20th stood to arms as Japanese forces began their invasion of Malaya. Their advance was rapid, forcing the Allies to begin a fighting withdrawal towards Singapore, which saw Hurley and his comrades drawn into the fighting by early January. After clashes with the enemy, the 2nd 20th withdrew to Singapore, taking up a position on the island's west coast. Forced to defend a wide frontage, Hurley and his comrades were widely dispersed across the area. After the Japanese invasion of Singapore Island began on the 8th of February, they could not hold the enemy off for long. The 2nd 20th was able to inflict heavy casualties before withdrawing south, where the men were separated and scattered, fighting in a desperate retreat. By the 15th of February, Allied forces surrendered to the Japanese. Hurley found himself among more than 130,000 Allied personnel who were now prisoners of war. Hurley and his comrades were initially imprisoned in Changi, but it was not long before they were allocated to external work parties across Japan's conquered territories. Hurley was likely among the 563 men of Sea Force, which departed Singapore in November 1942, destined for Japan. He was sent to Tokyo 4B Camp Noetsu on the west coast of Japan, not far from the Shinetsu chemical factory. A number of the prisoners worked in a nearby stainless steel factory, while others were put to work breaking rock for smelting and labouring in the coal mines. The prisoners worked long hours and lived in substandard conditions in the camps without access to proper shelter, clothing, medicine and food. Having spent months in the tropical climate of Singapore, many suffered from the cold Japanese winters, resulting in deaths from diseases such as pneumonia. During this time, Hurley, who was older than many of the other prisoners, became a father figure to younger soldiers, among whom he was well liked and respected. Noetsu camp could be brutal, with prisoners subjected to harsh treatment, including beatings and periods spent in solitary confinement resulting from small misdemeanours. Rations were minuscule, almost at starvation level, and deaths were more common in Noetsu than in any other camp in Japan. One of Hurley's comrades, who was also imprisoned at Noetsu, described the camp as living hell. We were treated like animals, and any small trouble was such as breaking a dish, we would be stood out in the cold for hours with a bag over our head, belted for ignorant mistakes, dragged out of bed during the night in the snow and made to bash each other, run through the snow after a hard day's work, and food only fit for dogs. By the war's end in 1945, the death rate at Noetsu had reached 20%. Of the 300 Australians sent there, 60 died in captivity. Among them was Private John Hurley, who died of malnutrition in December 1943. After the war, 8 Japanese guards from Noetsu were tried for war crimes against the prisoners. They were found guilty and sentenced to death. Today, Private John Hurley lies at the Yokohama War Cemetery in Japan. He was 45 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private John Hurley, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If able, please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières, or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, They will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorials Development Project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.